My sister's a sophomore in high school, and I'm going to be a senior, yet her makeup somehow always looks cuter than mine. I've never had a serious boyfriend before, yet her and this kid she met in gym have been in a relationship for nearly 3 years. It seems like my sister's blossoming faster than me, and it does sting a little, not gonna lie. But as of lately, I've noticed she's been keeping to herself a lot. Not just from me, but from all of her friends, including her little boyfriend. I brought her back some takeout from Noodles & Company last Sunday, and when I came in her room, I saw that she chopped all her hair off, and it was the shortest I've ever seen it. It didn't look bad, but she never mentioned wanting to change her hair, and it wasn't like her to make changes on the whim like that. She didn't wear her usual makeup to school the next day either, and for a lot of girls it's normal not to feel like making the effort to put on a face on some days. But this was the first time in years I've ever seen her leave the house with no makeup on. What was even more puzzling was I saw she wore someone else's clothes to school that day. Clothes that were definitely not hers, nor were they the style she would typically wear. I found out she borrowed this outfit from one of her friends, and she even wore her friend's clothes for the rest of the week. Chances are this was just a phase, so I didn't know if I should ask her about it. Our mum tried to probe her a bit about the haircut, but all my sister told her was that it was her hair and will grow back. Otherwise, she didn't go into detail about why she did it. Tonight, she finally broke down and showed me some DMs she was getting on Instagram. In her inbox, there were several messages from a user who I assumed knew her from school, although this person never actually said anything in her DMs. All they sent were pictures of my sister by her locker and with her friends at lunch, but the message that really upset her was a photo of her walking home on Friday. The picture showed her right by the driveway of our house, which would mean that the sender possibly followed her home that day. I told my sister we needed to call the cops, but she thought changing her look would confuse the stalker and throw them off, even though they already knew my sister's name since they followed her Instagram, and they might have even had classes with her. I convinced her that going under the radar wouldn't solve anything, so she agreed to talk to our parents, who didn't even know what Instagram was. When we went to the police, they interviewed some students at our school and made it clear to everyone that they could easily trace these messages if nobody fessed up. That's when a group of girls admitted that they were behind it. My sister and this one girl didn't like each other because there was a time when her boyfriend kind of liked them both and he chose my sister. It was a stupid issue to have beef over, but I guess at their age, stuff like that seems a bigger deal than it is. The girl did apologize, since her parents forced her to, so maybe she learned her lesson. As for my sister, she seems to be back at her old self, although this girl continues to glare at her in the hall, and I hate to say it, but she seems like a lunatic. My twin sister and I had both applied for the same business college across the other side of the country, and when only I got an acceptance letter back, I knew Brianna was crushed. She did her best to be happy for me, but it was obvious she was upset. It wasn't just the rejection that was on her mind either. We'd never spent a single night apart since birth. I know it probably sounds weird, but if you're a twin, you'll understand. We cried for weeks, and on the morning I left for first semester, our goodbye hug took like 3 hours. Neither of us wanted to let go. Eventually, it was finally time to leave, and we promised we'd take turns calling each other every single night at 9 p.m. sharp until I came back. Regardless of how many new friends I made or how many parties I went to, I always dropped everything I was doing at 9 p.m. to call Brianna and talk about how our days went. As the semester went on, Brianna started getting more and more irritable. One Wednesday night, it was my turn to call, and I was like 6 minutes late. My dorm was on the 8th floor of this big student apartment block, and the elevator was out of order. By the time I'd walked up 8 flights of stairs in a dark stairwell with no cell service, it was barely past 9 p.m. As soon as I opened the door to my dorm, my phone pinged to life. There was a bunch of missed calls and a whole heap of passive-aggressive texts, like, "So much for twins, huh? Only took you 4 months to forget me." I quickly hit call on Brianna's contact, and she answered before the phone even registered a ring, but she was very abrupt with me, even though I explained how the elevator was out of order. Yet, she insisted that I forgot to call her, and after maybe 5 minutes of talking, she ended our conversation and said she was going to bed. I didn't sleep very well that night. I must have finally drifted off sometime around 4, because when I woke up, there was a single text message from Brianna at 8:59 a.m. It was just a single tear-crying emoji. I texted her back saying I'm sorry and asked if we could talk about this. The message sat there. Normally it would show 1 tick for delivered and a green tick for read, but my text wasn't getting through. I sighed, threw my phone in my bag, and ran off to class. After the lecture, I pulled my phone out. There was no less than 30 missed calls and messages, most of them from my mum and dad. I called Mum back and she answered the phone hysterically crying. "It's Brianna," my mum said between sobs. Her stupid phone. I heard the phone drop, Mum crying, and Dad picking up the phone. Dad was always the strong one, but even I could hear his voice was different. He said there was an accident last night, and that a fire had started in Bree's room. The fire department said it looked like her phone overheated and exploded while it was on the charger. My heart skipped a beat. Brianna always slept with her phone under her pillow. She said it was because otherwise she wouldn't hear her alarm in the morning. And before my dad even finished telling me the news, I already knew she didn't make it out alive. They told my parents it would have been quick and she didn't suffer. But I was frozen in disbelief. Brianna had just texted me at 9 a.m., yet my dad said the accident happened overnight. I had so many questions, but all I could do was hang up the phone and stand there in stunned silence. Most of the funeral service was a blur. When it was my turn to deliver my sister's eulogy, I opened my phone to where I'd written the speech and looked out over the hundreds of people that showed up to pay their respects to Brianna. Brianna hated crowds, so she's probably happy she's not here today. Everyone let out a painful chuckle. It feels like she's just going to walk through the door or call me on the phone. I hadn't even finished my sentence when my phone started ringing. I looked down at my phone and choked on my breath. It was a call from Brianna's number. It probably seemed crazy for me to answer my phone in the middle of my sister's service, but I knew I couldn't miss her call this time around, even if she was silent when I answered. To this day, I still get the occasional phone call from Brianna's cell. It used to scare me, but now I find comfort in the idea of her still being around. I know there's probably a rational explanation for all of this, like a mutual friend playing a cruel trick on me and emulating her number. But I like to believe that Brianna will always be with me, and I always answer her calls, even when there's nobody on the line.